the friends that I have that do extremely well from a cash flow perspective feel like they're missing some level of meaning in their life. I know my venture-backed friends look at my cash flow friends and they're like, wow, they got it so good. Like they're living the life.
What is up, everybody? This is Michael Sikand. I'm joined by my co-founder and co-host Simran Sandhu, and we are back with another episode of Our Future podcast. We call this the entrepreneurship show for young people because we study what some of the coolest founders in their early to mid-20s are doing, talk and analyze their businesses, because me and Simmy have a little bit of experience hustling as a young cat in business. We sold our company in 2023 to Morning Brew at the ages of 22 and 24. So we know a thing or two about how to hustle, how to scrap, how to make some money, and how to get a deal done. So now we just get to chat about these cool topics. We're going to go a little bit more freestyle on this episode, but just some things fascinating us and some cool businesses that popped on our radar from some really cool founders who are young and ambitious. So Simmy, what you got for us today? Let's chat this one up. What's good?
Let's do it, man. I was watching CNBC. So usually, in the background, I'll just have some TV show playing. Just, you got to like the extra noise. It makes it feel like, there's some activity going on at the house. And, usually it's good, right? You're getting your news or whatever. But this weekend, they were just running reruns of Shark Tank. And, I used to love Shark Tank, like in high school, in college, and I was just watching the pitches and I was seeing how these like judges were going back and forth with the people trying to pitch their companies. And I was like, dude, this is like so unrealistic. Like, first off, like these don't feel like real companies. Like it's just like small passion projects, started by like, whatever, like it's just like something interesting. And usually they're like all CPG or some kind of like physical product. But then like the deals are extremely sharky. They're like, here's 50 grand. Now let me take like 40% of your business. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. Like you can be, a kid out of like NYU and go raise like 2 million on an $8 million valuation, like, right out of the gate just for like having a college degree. And I was like, they're out here giving people 50K for 40% of the business.
Dude, I feel like for one, just having CNBC on repeat in the background is a power move. I love how you always did it. You did it when we lived in Austin. You did it all the time. And it's like, it's almost like one of those situations where if it's playing enough around you, like you'll become one of those moguls, one of those tycoons that speaks on the channel, Speaking of our future, how there isn't a successful startup I haven't covered. All right. Like there's definitely some, but I'm pretty plugged in. And some of our most successful videos have been Shark Tank related. Now, here's the interesting part. Of all the businesses that we have had some Shark Tank affiliation that we've covered, most of them didn't get a deal. Like obviously there's like Ring and Scrub Daddy, which are two huge videos for us because they were the outliers. But mainly it's like these guys got rejected by Mark Cuban or these guys got rejected by Lori Greiner and they went on to build a massive company. So it's almost like the reverse effect. If they don't invest in your company, you're actually going to have a bigger outcome because you're not going to take some sharky turns and lose control of your business. And you know what I'm saying? It's like hilarious.
Yeah, it's probably a blessing if the deals don't work out, which in most of the case seems to be what happens, right? So people will get a deal and then afterwards, so we have a few folks who, have built CPG companies and then got a deal on the show. And then afterwards they'll like follow up with them and they'll be like, hey, like they'll be asking more follow-up questions or they'll do a little bit more diligence. And most of the times the deals just don't go through, right? Like, so they may get a deal on the show and then afterwards they don't, and it all falls through and it's just good PR and for everybody. And it's a feel good moment. But, something else that was interesting was, Mark Cuban had like agreed to invest in one of my friend's companies on the show. And afterwards he like decided, you know what? I don't really, I'm not going to put him on blast because they probably wouldn't want this to be.
All right.
I don't want to put them on blast just because I think they wouldn't want it to be public. But what he was saying was like, he just decided, he's like, you know what? Like, I don't love these terms. I don't want Mark as an investor anymore. And so like Mark's team like followed up with one email and he just stopped responding. And I think they followed up a few more times and that was kind of it. Like, so he just like stopped replying to their emails and they just like forgot about it and moved forward on the next thing. And I thought that was just so funny.
it's also, I don't want to deal with Mark Cuban's team. I want to deal with Cuban himself. And also, if you want to email Cuban, like I did this back in the day. I had
Yeah.
a long email exchange with him and to try and invest in our future when we were trying to raise money. So it ain't that hard to get to the boy. I think his email is like mcuban@gmail.com. So shoot or shoot, guys. Go ahead and get him yourself. You don't need Shark Tank. But that whole concept of like media combined with like investing is something that I feel like we really modeled our future off of, in that just the PR and awareness can create so many opportunities for a business. And in many ways, like what our future is, right? Our media side is like a TV show, right? Where we're covering, you know, the coolest startups that we think are interesting and giving them PR. And, you know, obviously we do advertising and stuff. So it just goes to show the power of media and, you know, business. And it's something that, you know, I think was underexploited, which is one of the reasons we started our future, right? Is just to give startups more channels of distribution and awareness in an entertainment perspective.
I think a lot of people are realizing the value of being distribution first in general. And I think a lot of the folks that are having success with these, you know, mini SaaS companies or these AI tools are folks that just nail the viral marketing side of this. And so, you know, we had came across this business. It was called GPTZERO. And, you know, it was like one of those apps where it helps you detect if AI is being used in the content or in the writing
Yeah.
or whatever. So, you know, I'm sure people have strong feelings about it, but you know, they were doing something interesting in that they were able to test it based on two specific variables, and I think it was proximity and burstiness. And so proximity was the amount of randomness that you know, was shown throughout the writing itself. And so if there was more randomness, then it would detect that this was a
Got
human
it.
writing it versus an AI who is you know, usually a little bit more consistent. And then the burstiness of it is that you also have varying sentence length. And so, you know, human usually is writing a little bit more choppier, or there's like more variance from one sentence to the next in terms of the length. Whereas when it's AI, it's usually all kind of consistent sentence structure. And so he essentially used those two variables, ended up building this company. I think they've got over 1 million users from it for it now. That said, like he was really early from the standpoint of like first to market with one of these tools. Now there's a shit ton of them. Like Chat GPT, I think had one, and then it was really bad, and so they had to discontinue it. But I know Hugging Face has ones, and there's tons of other people. But the way they nailed it was just distribution. Like they were really good at like taking like a viral B2C playbook and getting like over 1 million people to use it very, very quickly. And I think up to this point, it's been a lot of like teachers and students and stuff. I'm assuming like students who are trying to verify like, yo, could like an AI detect if this is AI
Yeah.
written, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
But I think eventually the use case will extend out to like governments and like, you know, we'll kind of shift to a traditional B2B model of some kind.
Yeah, I think like verifying the authenticity of like writing and text is key. I think people are working on it in the video landscape, which I think is going to be even more important. So, you know, when a video goes out, how quickly can we prove that it's AI or a deep fake? I think it's very, very critical. But yeah, I mean, this is just a classic case of young entrepreneurs noticing a trend like AI. Suddenly, they probably had all their friends using it in school, and they're like, okay, like there's a huge business case here to help these institutions monitor, you know, plagiarism. Speaking of, there's this company called Turnitin. I interviewed their CEO back in the day on my podcast. And it only occurred to me during the interview, I'm like, this guy's like probably screwed over a lot of students. Like, this is the business podcast for young people. What the fuck am I doing talking to this guy? His company was acquired by, I think,
Yeah.
private equity. It was worth hundreds of millions. Turnitin was plagiarism verifier. So they'd check the entire web. They'd pretty much, you know, just scrape the entire web and made sure that no, you know, two sentences were the same. And there wasn't too much of a similarity there. And that business is super valuable. His name was Chris Karen. I
Yeah.
think it was $100 million plus company. So pretty wild, right?
It's so funny. It's all the tools being built right now that are doing extremely well are mostly ideas that were backed by big VC firms 5, 10 years ago. And they already had very successful outcomes. So those companies have been bought for hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. But now it's almost flipped a little bit. So these companies are just extremely cash flow generative. I think with GPT-0, they were saying they had more money in the bank than what they raised for it. And so they raised almost $3.5 million, and maybe even more for the company over its life cycle so far. And that means that they have like close to 3.5 to 4 million just sitting in the company bank account. Isn't that crazy?
That's wild. I think because usually selling B to G or B to E is super hard, like selling into school districts and stuff like that. But when you have a
Yeah.
trend this explosive, I feel like, so okay. So here's what I'll say, right? Like when you're thinking of building a business that's selling to like educational institutions or governments, right? Long sales cycles, hard to make sales. That being said, I think every few years there's a major technological trend that these institutions can't afford to be late to. And I believe that AI and AI generated writing on behalf of students and the effect on the educational quality was one of those trends nobody could ignore. So it was a situation where they were much more likely uh, to move. You could also look at for the educational landscape, maybe some security things around, for example, the increase in school shootings and such. So, there's things that these kind of slower sales targets will be quicker on if it's a big enough trend, if that makes sense.
Well, dude, I think you're tiptoeing around an even bigger point, which, in the last episode, we talked about creativity around the business model. And so, again, if you're going into a space where selling, maybe B2B in this case, which would be schools and stuff, is really annoying, there's not that much money. Maybe the play is just turning it B2C and making it very consumer focused and make sure you nail the marketing side of it and get people really excited on TikTok and YouTube and IG and stuff and go sell to those individual consumers. Like you don't need, tens of thousands of dollar contract. You get 1 million people to even pay like 99 cents. You're chilling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could live on a beach somewhere with a Chrome extension. Um, so these guys, do they have a B2C part of this business, or is it just typically like these enterprise contracts?
No, a lot of it is B2C, right? Like I think I can go like sign up for the platform right now if I wanted to.
But why would you use it? Why would you use it for yourself? What kind of things are you verifying?
I don't know if I'm like a student and like maybe I did write a report or something with AI and I tweak it up a little bit and then I want to run it through the verification thing to see if I'll get caught or not.
Okay. Okay. So it's both sides. So it's the teachers trying to catch kids, and then it's kids trying to catch
Well, you
themselves. I
can
like
make it
that.
both sides. I'm saying like if you're smart
Yeah.
enough to use the tools, you're probably smart enough to like go that extra step to make sure you don't get caught.
Well, dude, there's also the angle of like if you release this tool, you said, so I was just reading on it. They got like 30,000 users in the first week, and a lot of them were teachers. So it's like if you can get these people who are in these positions to start using the product, then you can sell enterprise once you have all the teachers already like accustomed to it and using it. You know what I mean? So you could like yeah, it's probably like a good play to like
Yeah.
launching B2C is the lowest friction, right? It's almost like tons of software companies have done this. They just get, employees, directors at the firm to start using the software tool. And once people in the firm are aware of it, then they can go for the enterprise package. So, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. They were able
Yeah,
to launch
for
this.
sure.
But I also think the story was inherently viral, like two kids trying to build this and, with everything, all the questions around AI, they were also pretty early. I think they launched in January 2023 and ChatGPT was November 22.
Yeah, for sure. I think the value with a lot of these AI companies or like these mini tools is they were just first. And it's funny because they haven't really innovated in the product for a very, very long time. I'm not saying that's not the case with these guys, but in general, like they were first to the market. They did really, really well. They work on it maybe a few hours a week. And they're able to keep that like position as like kind of being the market leader with like little to no work. And I just think it's so interesting. It's like that was the value. Like they just saw the trend before everybody else. I have another friend, and I'll probably talk more about him in next week's episode, but he did the same thing in the music space, which was like he realized like, hey, if he could alter the sound and the music for like using AI, like people could make their own tracks. And so then you started seeing like AI Drake and like AI Taylor Swift and stuff like that, and his business was doing like hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And so
That's
yeah,
crazy.
again, he was just like happened to be one of the first players. Now there's tons of these tools, but just like people being able to connect the dots.
Well, speaking of education, this makes me think of our boy Drew Speckman, who's building RapStudy, which he's raised some money for it. He has some big angels in the music space involved, but essentially, what RapStudy's mission is to use music to help kids learn better, and I think that's like genius, right? And now, like, I can't imagine kind of the things he might be able to do with AI, but turning a Dua Lipa song, Taylor Swift song, Drake song into whatever curriculum the teacher wants it to. So if you're trying to teach the periodic table, it'll like have Drake like be spitting those bars and then you're going to remember it so much better. So I I think there's a lot of really interesting educational angles that are probably less explored in this AI race outside of like B2B software and developer tools that could be really, really instrumental in the learning process. Because I don't know, man, if you listen to like All In podcasts, these guys are all talking about how bad the education system is and how much improvement needs to happen there. So probably a space that's kind of slept on in the startup land to go after the learning and the schools and things like that for these applications.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like a lot of students or younger people in general kind of default to trying to build these kind of tools. I don't even think it's like so much if people don't have the awareness around it. They just don't know how to market it the right way. So something is usually off with how they're either packaging it, they're pricing it, and
Mm-hmm.
how they're distributing the product. And I think that is kind of where the disconnect lies. I don't know if it's so much like young people aren't thinking of these ideas. I think these are honestly probably a little bit more intuitive for folks in general.
Do you know Oliver Ricardo, the founder of Tabs? He's doing something called StudyBuddy now, which is essentially enables you to, while you're taking online quizzes, like check the answers with AI or something like that. I mean, it's doing crazy MRR. Would you rather build for the? Okay, question for you: if you're going to do one of these plays, are you going to be building for the students, or are you going to be building for the educational institutions?
The students, 1,000%. Think about it. Like, who gets more of the value? Like, yeah, sure, the teacher can catch said student, and like, there's some satisfaction in that. But who gets more satisfaction? The kid who just used AI to write his entire paper now can go
Yeah.
screw around and play Xbox the rest of the night. Like, I think they're going to be more willing to pay out of these the two players in this scenario.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, kids are always cheating. They've been cheating for all time. So now they can just do it with some tech tools. That's funny, man.
I think this presents a really interesting question, which is like, what do you want to optimize for? Do you want to optimize for the cash flow, live a good life, or do you want to optimize for the, building something of true impact and going after the really, really big thing? And I've got a few interesting points here around this, but I'm curious around like your thoughts around this. Cause like our future, we tried to go for the really, really big thing. And, I think for the next company would love to do kind of the same approach, but, it's certainly interesting with all these folks around us who are like making a lot of money very quickly with, easier projects and companies and stuff.
Dude, yeah. I mean, I'm warming up to the idea, like I don't think I have to go and build like $100 billion company. I mean, honestly, I think it would be awesome to just build like a product or company that can be generating, tens of thousands a month that, we own 100% of. So, absolutely, dude. I think that's more the avenue of like our podcast listeners too. Like, not all of them want to go and raise venture from like Index and A16Z and do that and try and build like they want to make money. Like, they want to find creative ways to like build businesses in a scrappy format, right? And it's easier to do it than ever with all the tools available, with contract labor. So I don't know. I'm definitely in the boat of like being lean and doing something that can like get a lot of traction pretty quick, and then just try and build product or build brand that can help protect it against competitors. So I am absolute like if I had a super scrappy idea that I want to execute on, I think it would be a ton of fun. You could do it pretty quick. You could test it fast. I think it's a great strategy as well. I'm actually like kind of leaning more towards the more scrappy bootstrap route right now. So it's interesting.
Yeah, dude, I think it's a little bit of like, what do you want your lifestyle to be around? So if you want like a very flashy lifestyle, so if you want, the nice cars, the nice house, you want to go on really cool trips, you want to, I don't know, maybe you're into jewelry and designer stuff. It's very funny to me. I would have always thought up to this point that the way you do those things is you go after the big idea, you make it work, and you go make a lot of money, right? And you're just kind of in the trenches for a while. And what I've come to learn is it's not the people necessarily going after the big idea who get those things. It's always the cash flow first founders and business owners. It's the people who run these agencies. It's the people building these AI tools who are able to live those kind of lifestyles. When I look at the kind of lifestyles that my venture-backed founders live, they live more kind of conservative lifestyles. Like, yeah, they're doing well and they're making a decent amount of money. But like, if you're into those flashy things and that's what you're really trying to go for at the end of the day, like maybe necessarily like the big idea isn't necessarily conducive to that, because I actually think, when they've built a company or they've been trying to build a company for 7 to 10 years and they've been pretty modest up to that point and like they have most of the things they want, even when they have that big like windfall of money that comes in, it could be tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. And granted, I only have a few examples of this, they're still pretty modest.
Yeah,
Like they're
exactly.
not out here buying really big things and flashy items. Like I think they're just used to it. And so like they're still living very conservative lifestyles. And not to say they couldn't go do those things if they don't want to, but like I've just come to realize like that's just a different mindset. And so like based on what it is you're trying to do, you should kind of like build a business accordingly to whatever is conducive to that.
What's more attractive to you? I feel like you're in the boat of you already live pretty modestly. You're a pretty frugal guy. Like I could see you being definitely along that alley of like delayed gratification and waiting for that big massive outcome versus trying to build a business where you can be making a million or two a year within 2 or 3 years and traveling around the world and doing the things that you enjoy and light you up.
For sure. I go back and forth on this, to be honest with you. There are days when I'm like, man, the super rich cash flow lifestyle would be amazing. But I will tell you that the friends that I have that do extremely well from a cash flow perspective feel like they're missing some level of meaning in their life. Like they're not building towards anything very, very big and impactful. And I know that eats at them. And then alternatively, I know my venture backed friends look at my cash flow friends and they're like, wow, they got it so good. Like they're
Yeah.
living the life. And so I think the grass is always greener, depending on which side you're on and like
Yeah.
what it is you're lacking. If you're rich, then it's probably meaning. If you're going after the thing that has a meaning, it's probably being wealthy and being able to spend generously. So I will tell you that like I think I want to go after the really big idea still. I'm 25 years old. I think like this is the most risk loving I will ever be. I don't have any like familial like big obligations. I don't have a wife. I don't have a kid. And so I look at it as like this is the time in my life where maybe I spend the next 2 to 5 years even like trying to build something out. It doesn't work, and yeah, that would suck. But like no harm, no foul to some extent. I always know I can go land a big corporate job if I want to and be just fine, or go start another agency or go start another like cash flowing business. Like that will always be on the table.
Yeah.
But I think, those big opportunities are few and far between. And they're only getting more and more competitive. And so the way I hedge that, I guess, a little bit is, I've been very interested in real estate as of recent. And my brother's big in real estate, and so I'm trying the like bought a property with him, but I'm trying to get more into that. And I think that kind of scratches my like short term money appreciation cash flow itch that I might have. And that's like it's meant to be on the side and it'll always stay on the side, but I know I can kind of keep building that nest egg with enough time.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I think for me, I'm a very passion driven founder. Like I need to be consumed and obsessed with
Yeah.
something. And that's how greatness makes its way out of my body. So that's what I know about myself. And I think that whether it's a venture back company, whether it's a bootstrap company or project, um, whatever's going to light me up and get me excited about life and get me out of bed in the morning, I think is what I need to do. And I've been working on this idea I've been telling you about in the media space and on the YouTube side. And I learned a lot of stuff in media, doing Our Future. And I've seen so many founders just wash, rinse, and repeat the thing that they are really good at, and in a just a slightly differentiated way the second time around. So I'm kind of leaning into that philosophy right now.
Dude,
But
for sure. It's
yeah,
like you know yourself better than anybody else, which is why sometimes even trying to get advice is useless, because at
yeah,
the end of the day, the answer you're looking for and you're just seeking someone else to validate it for you.
exactly.
But that's just like not all that beneficial or productive.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to know deep down in your heart that it can work. And like there's nothing that's going to stop you. Nobody can compete with you. This is going to be the best thing that anyone's ever seen. And I agree that it has to be intrinsic. And you do have to have you do have to listen to your investors when you're building a venture backed company, right? Like they're going to give their 2 cents, and like it may not be the thing that you want to do. So you do lose that master of your destiny type thing, but you theoretically could make a ton of money. You could be on the cover of Forbes. I think what you mentioned is like a lot of our bootstrap founder friends, like they don't get a lot of validation for what they do. Yeah, they might have a Rolex, they might be able to go to the fancy vacations, but like nobody really knows who they are, and like they just don't have that same credit in the business
Yeah.
landscape and world, as somebody who's been more involved with like the
And no
PR
one
and side
cares.
of M&A and venture.
No one cares because there's so many rich people out there. To a lot of people, you're just another rich guy, or
Yeah.
gal for that matter. Like it's just like cool, like another person with money, like tons of them out there. So I think that's where, to your point around validation, why it's like not always so interesting. Whereas like someone who's like trying to do something that is like damn near crazy, like you just look at them and like that's insane. What, like how did you get into that? Like what are you guys doing? I think that's just inherently more like thought provoking and like makes you curious and kind of draws people in. Go
I
ahead.
was, I was just going to say the great thing about business is there's so many ways to get rich and so many ways to do it on your own terms, and so many ways to, if you need to just go, suck money out of this incredible country and all the people who are willing to take risks and back you on what you want to do. So
For sure. I want to bring up this tweet I saw, and I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about now. And I thought it was just entertaining in general. But the tweet was, essentially around this question, which was, "What's the wealthiest person you know do for work?" And I want to read off some of the answers for you. So, a few of the answers were interestingly around like manufacturing and warehousing. So, they were doing, a lot of people were doing like packaging and labels for CPG companies and pharmaceutical companies. That seemed to be a big concentration of folks. One of the folks said they knew someone, the wealthiest person they knew invented Uno. So like one off, like random things like that. Another person had made sheds with the Amish, and then they were funneling money into apartment complexes. But the overwhelming majority were one of these three categories. So real estate, hedge funds, and family offices, so financial firms of some kind, and then blue collar, so construction, oil and gas, and then even some level of like devices, so alcohol and tobacco. But the vast majority were concentrated around those three or four things, and I think only one or two people had mentioned software and technology in that. And so it just reminded me again of like what kind of a bubble we live in sometimes, where it's just like there's so much money out there to be made, and
yeah.
like sometimes it just feels like we have our eyes closed.
Well, dude, it's funny you mentioned like the labeling and packaging. For some reason, that just seems to have the most billionaires or something, Like my girlfriend's friend has like he's from China and has like, like every Ferrari possible. And his parents do those like Chinese restaurant takeout boxes. Like they make all of those. And it's like, oh, got it. And then I have another
Yeah.
friend like and is like, oh, like what does he do? He's like, oh yeah, his family makes all the forks for Panda Express. I'm like, oh, got it. I didn't know that was Ferrari money, but it is. It's volume and it's manufacturing. So pretty mind blowing, honestly.
Dude, 100%. I mean, you walk into a Walmart, you walk into a Target, Meijer, whatever, HEB, and everyone who has a product in there is rich, and the people who made those products are also very rich. So
Yeah.
it's like, if you have any affiliation into the materials or items inside the store, you're probably doing very well in life.
Yeah. You just need to have some affiliation to the space, and you're probably chilling in a yacht somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
That's funny, man. That's all valid. I think we had some good takes. I think there's a lot of different ways you can win, and we probably shouldn't just pigeonhole ourselves into like venture back, founder. We'll curate some good stuff for you guys, some interesting stories, across the board.
Another, for sure, and another big thing that I think a lot of money is, or value creation is, around buying businesses. And I think everyone's opening up to this idea. You hear a
Yeah.
lot about it on X and Twitter, but a lot of alpha is created around like these distressed businesses, or like almost opportunistic, like opportunistic strategies on growing it. So I would say, if you're ever going to go into the space of like you want to buy a business, like before you ever consider it, like, one, know it's a lot of work, but two, like, know how you're going to grow it before you're going to buy it. There needs to be some edge that you have or unfair advantage before you buy a business. But there's a lot of value in doing so because they're generally like de-risked to some extent, right? They're already off the ground. That's half the hurdle. And you have some momentum there. And so, yeah, a lot of also wealthy people are just, folks who identified a business in distress or identified an opportunity and then were able to scale it to like the next level and farther and beyond that point as well.
Dude, no doubt. No doubt. There's a lot of people who are can't find a buyer for their business, who are aging out of the space. So go ahead and look at who your family friends are, who your parents' friends are, service providers that you might meet coming to your house for whatever. Just be curious, be interested, and see if there could be totally be an opportunity in there somewhere for you to take over a business and just apply a younger, more savvy marketing strategy to grow it. It's a lot easier to buy a business than to start one from scratch.
Dude, also, I mean, I feel like people don't talk about this enough, but it's also one of those things where you can use, bank debt to go buy these businesses. Yeah, like you do need some money to be able to put on a down payment and stuff, but like you don't got to sell 30% to an investor like right off the gate, like right out of the gate. You can just use like bank money and be smart around leverage. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, you go back to like these people who've just made a lot of money and it's doing things like this. It's just like either small roll-ups or like they've just been really smart about like a business that is already sound and they just have, again, like an
Yeah.
unfair advantage or like some connection that they may have to somebody else to grow the business really fast.
Well, in so many of these situations, these solo entrepreneurs have built their business to like $1 million a year, but like you can see that it could be so much bigger, but they just don't have the wherewithal, the energy, the firepower to go and do it. Like it's like the McDonald's dude, like Ray Kroc is like, yo, this shit's fire. Like this should be in every like part of America. And they're like, no, I don't really think that. I just kind of want to run my hamburger shop. And they let the wolf in the hen house.
That's so true. That's so true. There are so many people in this category who are just content. Like they've got one or two locations and they are extremely happy. They wouldn't change a single thing. Um, I had this conversation with my uncle probably like 4 or 5 years ago, and I was reading this Forbes article, and we were we were flying somewhere together, and it was like this guy in construction who was like going to do something really big, like several billions of dollars of projects, and I asked my uncle at that point, like, hey, have you considered expanding to a bunch of other states, and like do you want to like keep growing this? And he's like, no, like I don't want the headache. I'm perfectly happy with how things are going. And I don't know, at the moment when he was telling me that, I just didn't understand it. I was like, yeah, that sounds, I don't understand, but like you do you kind of thing. But like now I at least am understanding and certainly can appreciate the sentiment.
Absolutely. Well, that was a fun episode, dude. Thank you everybody for listening to our future
Ton of
podcast.
fun.
Yeah, make sure to subscribe and follow us wherever. We have a big Instagram presence where we kind of just share clips from some of the founders we talk about. And as always, stay frosty and let us know your feedback and comments, and we'll get back to you. All right, peace out, everybody.
Stay frosty.